So good morning everybody and welcome back to another film. You join me in the Lake District National Park and it's just gone sunrise. There was a little bit of colour off to the right hand side about 5 minutes ago, but that's completely gone, and to be fair it wasn't worth shooting. It's not the reason I'm here today. The reason I've come is over to the left hand side. You can just see in the valley there's a nice big area of woodland. There's several paths running through that woodland. It's my plan today just to go down there and explore. I have nothing specific in mind to photograph. It's just a walk with the camera to see whatever I can find. There is a forecast of fog around about 10 o'clock. If that comes, fingers crossed, that'll be fantastic, but I'm not holding out much hope for that. There's a little bit of breeze here this morning and that's probably going to put an end to any fog if it was going to come. So I'll get the camera bag, have a wander down there and just take my time, wander through, keep an open mind, try and get the creative process going and hopefully find some nice images. So I've no sooner started my walk than the rain has started. Well, it's actually more like a very fine drizzle or mizzle, as they like to call it, somewhere that falls between the two of mist and drizzle. So it's just possible that the weather forecast have got it wrong and that fog that they predicted is actually coming in the form of rain. But it's so lovely and quiet here right now. And just the sound of the stream at the back. I was up in Keswick at the weekend and it was absolutely rammed packed with tourists, and of course I was contributing to that busyness, and I'm sure the local trades are benefiting at last from it. But yeah, it was absolutely ram-packed full of people. Could hardly move on the high street, and it couldn't be any different than what it is right here at the moment. And it just goes to show what a difference it makes now that people aren't going overseas for the holidays. But yeah, here it's really, really nice. Just got rid of the bag. As I was walking down the footpath just behind the camera there, this group of trees, possibly including that one, caught my eye, but particularly these at the background. These are oaks and they're growing out of just this rocky outcrop here, and I love the way that they're all leaning over one side. They're very, very dynamic shapes to them. I'll show you a slightly cropped in version of the ultimate shot that I'm looking for, but I just don't think the conditions are right right now. It just needs the atmosphere to create separation from these trees to the background. But what lovely shapes they've got. Just the way that they lean over to that left hand side. Very, very strong composition. But like I say, I think it needs the atmosphere, and for that reason I'm not going to take a shot of it. But certainly that slightly cropped in look I think would be the composition that I'd be looking for, and something like a 16:9 crop would really suit it, just to exclude the highlights at the top part of the frame and just to have an inclusion of that, like a fairly wide letterbox of that central portion as you see it now. But possibly one to come back to on another day. So the rain is continuing to persist, and I'd virtually put everything away. This camera went away and I was just walking along the footpath. I've got my leggings on, so I'm pretty well kitted up now for if the rain gets any stronger. But as I was walking along the footpath, I was thinking about compositions and what I need to be keeping an eye out for. And I think given the conditions that I've got, which I haven't got the atmosphere, I think the bigger scene is out of the question. So I've got to focus on smaller details, and by that I don't necessarily mean macro, but something that falls somewhere in between the two. As I was walking along the path just here behind me, the rocky outcrop there drew my attention, as I'm sure it would anybody, because it stands out. It's a feature that's different to everything else along the footpath. I came to the edge of this drop here and look down, and those ferns that you can see there really caught my eye. And the reason for that is because we don't often see them at that angle. We're generally just walking past them. And these are ferns, it's not bracken. These look like buckler ferns. And I just like the way that they look from above. There's a very repetitive pattern. There is a gap in the middle that I'm not too keen on. But I am going to get the camera out and just see what it looks like. In terms of a composition, what I'm thinking is a vertical format, starting at the bottom here of these lower ferns, and then just nothing but inclusion of the ferns to the whole frame, to the top part, where I'll just cut it off where they stop. I'm going to look through this camera first, because I often find that this camera gives me a nice idea of what the final image is going to look like before I get the big camera out. So I'm going to do that now. So I think I'm reasonably happy with this image. It's one of those where you never really know until you see it on a big screen. But I've arranged the camera up as I saw it with that camera, and there is some compositional quality to it. Like I say, camera's facing very, very steeply down this edge of this hillside here, and what I hadn't anticipated is how much of the really near foreground ferns I would be using. And the reason I've done that is because the near foreground ferns are a lot lighter in colour, a lot fresher looking than the ones at the background, so you've got some contrast in the tonal range of the greens. And not only that, some of the nearer ferns at the front here have got a nice shape into them that naturally makes your eye gravitate to the centre of the frame and then takes you through the image to the background ferns. I am actually going to do this as a focus stack. I've got the 2-second timer on. I'm at f11 because I want to shoot this at the sweet spot of the lens. If I go to f16, 22 or even 32, the quality of the image is going to suffer, so I would rather do a focus stack and blend them all together in Photoshop later rather than lose that quality. So the first one now, quite a slow shutter speed, 1/4 of a second, but it's very, very still. They do blow occasionally, but just time it nicely between any slight bits of breeze that we get. So I'll put that back to 100% and move the frame up to the next point, being careful to move the focusing ring and not the zoom ring, and just focus that into the next point, which is about 1/3 of the way up the frame, maybe 1/4. Take the next image, being careful not to move the tripod at any point during the exposure. So again, 100%, move the focusing point up to the ferns at the background. I keep having to check which ring I'm moving. I don't use this lens that often. So I'm going to take one there for the ferns that are nearer to the lens, and I'm also going to focus through those ferns just to take the ones at the background. My memory is terrible, how often I've got to check, even though I've only just moved the focusing ring a couple of seconds ago. I've got to recheck that I'm actually turning the right one. That's all right there. And then back to 100%. We're at the top third of the frame now. As things get further and further away, you don't have to do as many stacks. It's more often the case that as subjects are nearer to the camera, you have to do a lot more focus stacking to enable to get the sharp focus throughout. So again, check front of the lens, make sure I'm turning the right ring, find the sweet spot and take the image. I'm going to take one more right for the far end of the frame, the furthest point away, and then I think we're done. Yeah, as I move it up, you can see that they are a little bit soft in the background, so that just brings them in nicely, and that should do the last frame. Yeah, it looks on the back of the camera quite a nice image. I might put a little bit of a very, very soft vignette around the edges just to draw your eye in, and maybe even just lighten the background ever so slightly. But I'll put that on now, not a bad start. So after I'd taken that last sequence of frames, I walked a little way into the woods, but within a few minutes the rain came heavier and heavier, and I decided that the best option, for a little while at least, was to head back to where the ferns was taken, where I knew there was some shelter beneath the rock wall. So I just sat there for a little while, listened to the rain, just enjoyed a few moments of peace and quiet before heading back out again. So I've been waiting for many a while for the rain to stop, and it really just hasn't let up in the best part of 3/4 of an hour. So rather than just sit there idly waiting, I thought I'd have a look around where I was, where I've got some relative shelter, and see if I could find anything. And I've come across this buckler fern frond here. Now at this time of year all the ferns are starting to reproduce, and they get these little spots underneath the leaves called sori, and these are the fruiting bodies of the fern that help it reproduce going forward. What struck me about this particular one is that it's set in a position where it's against, I find that so difficult, so it's set against the dark black background of the rock. It makes for a really nice striking image when it's backlit like this, and I've set the camera beneath it with a view to photographing it against that dark background. Now the trouble is the light here is really low. I've got the ISO put on 1600 at the moment, and I'm still only getting 1/4 of a second. Now I can't focus stack the image because every time the rain drops on the fern it changes its weight in terms of how much water's on the fern at any one time, so I can't focus stack it because I can't guarantee that I'm going to get the fern in exactly the same position every time, so I'm trying to get it in one go. Now the problem is with that is the rain is constantly hitting the fern, and every time it does it bounces because it's on this big long stem, and it takes a few seconds to stop bouncing before I can take the frame again. So I've been sat here for many a while trying to get the shot. I'm on f11, so I'm not getting complete sharpness across the frame. It's not ideal, but it's a nice dynamic image, and providing you don't focus too much of your attention on the out of focus portions, look at it as more of a pattern picture with the dynamic light, the high contrast, it really makes for a pleasing shot. So I'm going to put that on now. So after about an hour of constant rain, the clouds finally lifted and I was released from the jaws of the quarry face. I think the rain's going to start again pretty soon, so I'm going to be quick. As you can hear, there's a waterfall down to my left hand side. I'll show you that now. So it starts just here, very, very small, and ends up just down there. I've been down and had a look, it's not that good. All the mosses at the side are very, very dark and just not appealing to the photograph. I don't think they'd make for a great shot. But as I was walking down there, I couldn't help but notice this character here. This is an oak tree, and the trunk, as you can see, it's filled with polypody ferns. And what drew my eye to them specifically is if you look at the individual ferns, they're a different colour to the moss from which they're growing within, and that's really quite striking, and it's that contrast that we seek as photographers in our images. I think that will make for a great shot. I'm going to do a vertical composition, hopefully if I can get it in before the rain comes, and just fill the frame with all those ferns. So let's get the camera on and see how it looks. So the rain is coming, so I'm going to be quick. I've got the camera set up. I've got a 160mm focal length, which is about 120 on a full frame camera. I can't go any closer unfortunately because the land drops away and this is my strongest lens, so sadly I can't get as close as I would really like to, so I'm having to show the edges of the tree. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to crop that down a little bit in post-processing. It's not a problem. I'm only losing a very small amount around the edges, so I'm quite happy with that. In terms of aperture shutter speeds, I'm on 1/8 of a second at f13, a straight shot. I put it onto 400 ISO because the tips of the ferns are quivering around ever so slightly every now and again. So I'm going to take that now, 2-second timer, and there's the image. Press play and just zoom in, and if I take that to where I would like to crop it, which is about there, it's a really nice image, so I'll put that on now. So I think I'm going to leave it there. I'm trying to find my way back to the footpath. I didn't come back the way that I went, but you never gain anything if you don't go exploring. So I think today's film has been a bit of a fern overload, so I do apologise for those of you that are not keen on fern photography, but when you're out and about you just go with what catches your eye, and if it's the same subject photographed in different ways, then go with it. I've really enjoyed myself. Leave some comments below to let me know what you think of the images and the video. Give me a thumbs up if you've liked the video, and don't forget to subscribe if you're not already subscribed. So until next time, thank you all so much for watching. Bye for now.